Hi, Bob.
Say it's all record on this computer. Okay, here we go.
We have come together as a family. We have come here as we are. Yes. And we have come with arms wide open. We have gathered here in love. Let's sing it together. Spirit is in this place. Spirit is in this place. Spirit is in this. Spirit is in this place. Raise a roof with shouts of praise. Spirit's in this place. We sing and celebration. We sing with words of prayer. We sing with words of prayer. We affirm our life as sacred. We declare that peace is here. Yeah, Spirit is in this. Spirit is in this place. Ooh, Spirit is in this. Spirit is in this place. Spirit is in this. Spirit is in this place. Raise the roof with shouts of praise. Spirit's in this place. Ooh. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ooh. Spirit is in this place. Ooh. Let's sing it. Spirit is in this. Spirit is in this place. Spirit is in this. Spirit is in this place. Spirit is in this. Spirit is in this place. Raise a roof with shouts of praise. Raise a roof with shouts of praise. Spirit's in this place. Good morning. Bless you.
That was great, Jane. I love that one. Okay, welcome everybody. Glad to see everybody. It's so good to see everybody, actually. And I'm so glad you take the time to come and spend the morning with us. So as we take a breath in, we take in this one spirit that is over all, in all, and through all. One presence is all there is. It is one, complete and total, equal, equally distributed, and everywhere available. I feel this presence in things, in people, in human events. I feel God's beauty in nature with all the flowers and trees and animals all around us. I see God's strength in the mountains and the storms, and I am blanketed in love with the quietness of the night and the peaceful skies. I am one with the love of God. I am one in the love of God with all people. My love goes out to everyone, and I know that it is returned from everyone. I trust that the infinite love will guide and protect us in everything. I affirm the love governs all of humanity into pathways of peace, freedom, joy, health, and wealth. Every organ, action, and function of our physical body is rooted in spiritual perfection, from which it draws life. Knowing we all have enough to spare and to share, all our relationships grow and flourish. We appreciate this extra time we have to expand our creativity, inner peace, and appreciation, knowing our new world is always getting better and better. And these gifts we receive in joy, with gratitude and with complete sense of security. We expect everything we do to prosper. We expect new and wonderful experience to come to us. We expect peace and oneness in our lives right here and right now. And as this is true for me, it is true for all our world leaders as they govern from this one love and wisdom. As we change our thoughts, our world changes through an underlining perfection, an inner wholeness, a complete and perfect life, which is God. Love is an outpouring of the Spirit. Law is divine government. I release these words, which are God's words, into this divine government, knowing it is already done. And I release this back into the love of Spirit. And so we say, and so it is. And now we do our identity prayer. I know that within myself, there is a life which is perfect, complete, and divine. It was never born, and it cannot die, for it lives and is God. Within myself is wholeness, peace, poise, and the power of life. This life is health, it is abundance, and it is love. There is one life, and it is the life of God, and it is my life now, and so it is. Now we do a short meditation.
Stop wherever you are. Give yourself permission to take these few moments just for you. Breathe. Allow yourself to take the most supportive breaths you can, just for you. As you draw the breath deep within, imagine inhaling soft, soothing, glowing light. Imagine that light swelling and swelling within you with each inhale. Imagine it filling every space, easing away any darkness, any difficulty, any pain, or any negativity. Imagine that light is working its way into each of your cells, filling them, healing them, cleansing every inch of you. As you continue to breathe, pay some attention to your body. Are you holding tension anywhere? Check in with your toes, feet, thighs, chest, shoulders, hands, jaw, tongue, and forehead. Wherever you notice tension, see if you can allow these areas to relax as you fill with light and breathe. Then silently repeat the following to yourself. May I be happy because I deserve to be happy. May I feel peace and ease because I deserve to find peace and ease. May I let go of frustration, anger, or resentment because I deserve more for myself. And I choose not to allow myself to be dragged down by negative feelings. May I find joy because I deserve joy in this moment and all moments. May I be all that I hope for and imagine myself to be, because that is who I am. Take a few more deep cleansing breaths. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the room.
So join me if you wish in singing, I am as God created me. I am a light in this world. I am as God created me. I am as God created me. I am a light in this world. I am as God created me. I am as God created me. I am a light in this world. I am as God created me. I
Thank you, Jane. This is Brenee Brown. I don't know if people are familiar with her. I love her. She does a lot on YouTube. And if you want more of her, there's plenty out there that you can watch. And I listen to a lot of her And I kind of picked out a few things that kind of encompasses everything. Doesn't go into all the details that she does. Most of her YouTubes are an hour or 2 hours long explaining anything, but this hits all the hot spots that I wanted to give you. So enjoy. We have two of them. So the first one is shame and empathy. So enjoy.
Before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge that Andrea Conlon has joined us. She's a new one to join our Zoom sessions.
Oh, hi, Andrea.
Hello, glad you're here.
Welcome to our group. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
My name is Brenee Brown, and I am a shame and empathy researcher at the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work. I am the author of I Thought It Was Just Me, Women Reclaiming Power and Courage in a Culture of Shame. So when I first started this work, I was so excited to finally get an understanding of shame and what it meant and why so many of us have turned over big parts of our lives to it. So when I first started the work, I was really passionate about talking about the what is it and how does it work. You know, I wanted to explain to people, here's what I'm learning about shame. You know, here's how it works in our lives. Because the thing probably a year into this research, I knew three things. One, we've all got it. Two, no one wants to talk about it. And three, the less we talk about it, the more power we turn over to it. So in the beginning, I really focused on the what is shame and how does it work? What is empathy? How does it work? And as I would talk to people, I started to hear the why question more than any other question. People were interested in the what is it and how does it work? But what people really wanted to know is why. Why are you studying this? And why are you insisting that we talk about this? Because, you know, the truth is, these are tough topics. You know, when you tell people that you study shame, vulnerability, and empathy, they kind of look at you like, wow, were all the other topics taken? Or did you draw the short straw in research school? But that's not the case, you know. So people, and that's a mindful question, you know, why do you study this and why do you think we should talk about it? And so that's where I like to start. And I think what's interesting about my answer is that when I could not have answered the question, why shame and empathy 6 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago. But now, after talking to hundreds of men and women around the country about shame, and how it affects the way they live, love, parent, work, build relationships, I finally, for the first time and probably in my career, understand why. If you think about connection, and I talk a lot about connection in my work, connection is our ability to forge meaningful, authentic relationships with other people. I believe that connection is the essence of the human experience. It is what breathes lives and gives meaning to our lives. If you think about connection on a continuum, what I have learned is that anchoring this end of that continuum is empathy. It is what moves us toward deep, meaningful relationship. On the other side of the continuum connection is shame. It absolutely unravels our relationships and our connections with other people. And so to study shame and empathy and to ask people to engage in a national conversation about these things just for the sake of knowing shame and empathy, I think it might be too big of a question, you know, too big of a favor to ask people to talk about it just for that sake. But what I have learned is that if we want to understand connection, if we want to understand what really fills our human spirit, we have to understand what anchors both ends of that continuum. The vulnerability piece is if you imagine this continuum almost like an equalizer on a stereo, and it has a little knob that you can move, that knob is vulnerability. When we are in our best vulnerability, meaning open, willing to share not only our strengths with people, but our struggles, that moves us towards empathy. Empathy is about being vulnerable with people in their vulnerability. It's about being with folks. If you slide that knob on the continuum, over to shame, that's vulnerability at its worst. That's when I can't let you see these pieces of me because I fear that it will cause disconnection. Three of the big questions I want to answer in my research, where shame and vulnerability and empathy are central, have to do with courage, compassion, and connection. And so I'd like to kind of go through each of those. The first one is courage. When courage first came into the English language, it had a very simple definition. It comes from the Latin word cur, which means heart. And courage meant to speak your mind with your heart, to tell your story. I think over time that definition has changed in terms of the way we use it. But if you think about courage, and I use the term ordinary courage, which I read in an article by Annie Rogers. If you think about ordinary courage, telling our story, how do we do that in a culture of fear? Shame breeds three things: fear, blame, and disconnection. So how do we practice courage in a culture where we are incredibly afraid of not fitting in? How do I tell you my stories about those imperfect moments in my life, about the time when I was just not the mom that I wanted to be, about the time where I really screwed up at work and I lost the client, that I have a partner who's deep into addiction and I'm afraid for people to know because I don't want them to stop caring about my partner or question my judgment in terms of being with him or her. How do I tell these stories, which is the only way that we get out from underneath shame, in a culture where belonging and fitting in and being accepted are so critically important? So we're in this culture right now. What hasn't changed for us as people is the fact that we're wired for story. From the beginning of human time, we are wired to tell our stories. We're not born to keep secrets. We're not born, hating things about us and not sharing them with other people. We're born to tell our stories. So it's not people who have changed, it's the culture that's changed. And so how do we embrace and share the imperfections that make us who we are in a culture where we're afraid to not fit in? The second piece is compassion, and that is really in an important way related to story, because stories are only a form of connection when someone's listening and hearing us. So how do we have the courage to tell our story? But then where do we find the compassion to hear other people's stories? One thing that's real important to understand about shame is that while it's universal and all of us have it, it's triggered for all of us in very different ways. Maybe for me it's about body image or parenting or sex or addiction. For someone else it might be about providing, money, aging, religion. One thing that's universal about it is just listening to shame can be shaming for us. So if you were to share your story with me, how do I stay open and sit in that with you, as opposed to moving into blame and judgment?
Okay, that was one. This is two. This is like the 10 top rules for success from Brenee Brown, but it encompasses a lot. So that's why I picked this one. It's a little different.
All perfectionism is the 20-ton shield that we carry around hoping that it'll keep us from being hurt. When in truth, what it does is it keeps us from being seen. I know in the absence of love and belonging, there's always suffering. That I know for sure. I've just never done anything that's turned out to be valuable that wasn't just scared shitless to do it.
Need motivation?
Watch our top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men all my life. Like 9 to 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 to 9. This one's for my top 10.
She's Brenee Brown, and here's my take on her top 10 rules of success, volume 2. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Don't be a perfectionist.
How many of you struggle with perfectionism a little bit? Okay, so my favorite story is that someone sent me an email one time that said, hey, I know you have a book on shame, not so interested in that, but if you ever write on perfectionism, I can't wait. So here's the secret. When perfectionism is driving, shame is always riding shotgun, and fear is the annoying backseat driver.
Say it again.
When perfectionism is driving, shame is always riding shotgun. We struggle with perfectionism in areas where we feel most vulnerable to shame. Does that make sense? So we're all comfortable saying, yeah, I'm a little perfectionistic, which is code for like I do things really well. But I'm not comfortable saying I have shame. But perfectionism, what is that? I call it the 20-ton shield. Here's what perfectionism really is. It's a way of thinking that says this: if I look perfect, live perfect, work perfect, I can avoid or minimize criticism, blame, and ridicule.
Whoa, that's good.
All perfectionism is the 20-ton shield that we carry around hoping that it'll keep us from being hurt. When in truth, what it does is it keeps us from being seen. And so we had a great talk about what's the difference between perfectionism.
Yes, because somebody on my staff had the nerve to tell me that I was a perfectionist. And I absolutely denied that. And you stood by me. Thank you very much. Because I'm not a perfectionist. I'm a person who strives for excellence and requires excellence. There is a difference, is there not?
There is a difference. Here's the difference. Because sometimes I'm a healthy striver.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm a perfectionist. It depends on if I've got a worthiness crunch going on. So healthy striving is internally focused. It's I want to do this and be the best I can be. Perfectionism is not about what I want. Perfectionism is exactly what will people think.
Rule number 2, find true belonging.
I want to start with the Maya Angelou quote that you share. You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great. Let's dig in with what does true belonging mean and why this message? Why not?
You know, Maya Angelou has been my most steadfast counselor for my entire life. I discovered her probably 30 years ago when I was in college. And I lean into her work. You know how when you find those people that just are unsparing and honest in their work, but they also bring you joy and comfort? She's that for me. And I love everything she does except for that quote. That quote has pissed me off for decades. And I never understood this idea that you're free when you belong nowhere. And as a social scientist, I know that belonging, I know this for sure. Like if you ask me the one thing I know for sure, 200,000 pieces of data. I know in the absence of love and belonging, there's always suffering. That I know for sure. So this quote from her about belonging everywhere, which is really nowhere, is what sets us free, was so troubling to me. But then I started digging in and I started trying to understand, what does it mean to belong? And I never thought of the concept of belonging. I thought belonging was like, we have a crew.
Like a posse or a squad.
Yeah, we have a posse, a squad.
Yeah.
And belonging is something you kind of negotiate with external groups of people. But it's not. What I found very quickly is the rest of that actual quote is part of an interview that she did, where she ended up with Bill Moyers, where she ends up saying, you know, he ends up pushing a little bit on and saying, so are you saying that you belong nowhere and to no one? And she said, I belong to Maya. And what I found is that true belonging is a spiritual practice. And it's about the ability to find sacredness in both being a part of something, but also the courage to stand alone. And the people, for those of us who struggle to have the courage to stand alone, especially when we know that we're risking that sense of being a part of something because we disagree.
Yes.
Because we have a different opinion, because we love something different. That is the mark. That's the mark of true belonging, to be able to say, yes, I am a part of something bigger, but I also will stand alone when I need to. And then it was like, oh, you belong everywhere and nowhere. And that is liberation.
Rule number 3, brave the wilderness.
I've just never done anything that's turned out to be valuable that wasn't just scared shitless to do it. Like everything I've ever done that's ever really made a contribution, I have felt alone in doing it and afraid. But alive.
Yeah. That's a really interesting, go on, tell me more about that. Alive. Alone but alive. That's sort of like the wilderness.
It is the wilderness.
Because the metaphor for the book is, let's see if I get this right.
Yeah.
Rather than asking you, I'm going to try and you check my work. There's a poetic narrative about it being wild and risky, and you have to prepare to go there, and it's also stunning. And so there's an obvious, really clear connection between that and putting yourself out there. Yeah. There's risks and rewards and beauty, but there's an interesting twist, if I get this right, that it's not that you are in the wilderness, it's that you are the wilderness. Explain that, if you would.
Well, I think what I have found is that after the first time, and it only really takes one time, after the first time that you opt to brave the wilderness, you pull away from what a group of people thinks. Maybe it's your creative community, it's your critics. The first time you pull away and find power in standing on your own, I think your heart is marked by the wild. I think you belong into the wilderness in a different way. Because every time after that, when you choose fitting in over belonging to yourself, it's painful.
Rule number 4, be authentic.
When I do a lot of leadership work, I talk about understanding your personal values, and my 2 personal values are faith and courage. And so they say, don't talk about faith. It's inappropriate. This is an corporation. And then I do a lot of work in churches, and they'll say, don't cuss. And so I just got to the point where I'm like, look, I've sat across from thousands and thousands of people over the last 2 decades of my life, listening to the hardest things you can imagine. And the 2 things that everyone has in common when they're talking about those things are cussing and praying. If you don't want me to cuss and you don't want me to pray, that's awesome. Ask somebody else. Because what I'm not going to do is get up and bullshit you. And there are a million people in this space who are better than I am, who know different things than I do. Invite them. Right. If you need me to wear a suit, I totally get it. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to wear jeans and boots, and probably I'll wear a nice shirt.
Yep.
But I'm not going to do that, because I don't get up there when I speak in public. I don't get up there to talk to talk from my Brooks Brothers self to your Brooks Brothers self. I get up there, and when I walk on the stage, I'm going to talk about things that 90% of the people in the audience have never thought about, talked about, and are scared to listen to. And they need to see me as a person, and I'm just that person. I think if you invite me, I want your event or your leadership team, I want it to be successful.
Yes.
And if you need me to be someone different than who I am, it's not going to be successful.
Also, if you want to learn from other successful women entrepreneurs, check out my 254 Girl Boss series. It's free. The link to join is in the description below.
We think of vulnerability as a dark emotion. We think of it as the core of fear and shame and grief and disappointment, uncertainty, things that we do not want to feel, right? I call perfectionism the 20-ton shield. We carry it around thinking it's going to protect us from being hurt.
Yeah.
But it protects us from being seen.
Rule number 5, embrace vulnerability.
The biggest myth about vulnerability is that it's weakness. I think a lot of people were raised to believe that. It was modeled, I think, certainly in our culture. We see that a lot, that to be vulnerable, to be open, to be exposed is to be weak. And the truth is, what I found in my research is that vulnerability is not weakness. In fact, I would argue that it's our greatest measure of courage. When we went out and asked people, what is vulnerability? We heard things like, vulnerability is the first date after my divorce. Vulnerability is starting my own company. Vulnerability is taking responsibility for something that went wrong at work. Vulnerability is sitting with my wife who has stage 3 breast cancer and making plans for our young kids. Vulnerability is taking my business public. You know, the definition I use in my work of vulnerability is simply uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Vulnerability is about the willingness to show up and to be seen even when there are no guarantees. And it's interesting to me, I mean, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, I gave a talk, it's probably a couple of years now, and it was being translated by people doing American Sign Language, and they came up before the talk started, they said, are there any words that you're going to use a lot in your talk that we should know about that might be different? And I said, well, I use the word vulnerability a lot. And they kind of, there were two of them, they kind of looked at each other and they said, oh, we do this for vulnerability. And I said, what does that mean? They said, it means weak in the knees. And I'm like, wow, that's not how I talk about vulnerability. And she said, well, there's only one other sign for vulnerability. And I said, what is it? And she said, and I said, oh, that's what I'm talking about. And so to me, vulnerability is our most accurate measure of courage. I mean, it's pretty powerful when I have 13,000 pieces of data collected over 12 years that I cannot find a single incident or story of courage that was not completely underpinned by vulnerability. I think the problem arises that there's so many little paradoxes with vulnerability, and one of them is that vulnerability is courage in you, but weakness in me. When I meet you, it's the first thing I look for in you, but it's the last thing I want to show you in me. And so I think to really put ourselves out there, knowing that if we do that enough, we're going to fail, I just don't think it gets more courageous than that.
Rule number 6, set boundaries.
I'm going to tell you the story of how I get to the best definition of boundaries from a creative.
Okay.
Kelly Ray Roberts,
okay.
Artist, Portland. She's an artist who self-trained. She was an oncological social worker, like being a social worker in oncology, hard work. She taught herself to paint. Now she has a thriving, huge business. And she was teaching art classes, and people were copying her art and selling it on Etsy and selling it at different places. And one day she wrote a blog post, and it was about boundaries, and she said, let me tell you what's okay and what's not okay. And she made a list of everything that was okay. It's okay if you copy my art and hang it in your house. It's okay if you download one of my paintings and use it as a little sticker on your website as long as it's attributed. It's okay if you do this. It's okay if in good spirit you do this and this. It is not okay if you do the following 5 things.
I love it.
And it was the clearest example. And I called her and I'm like, you just pulled some social work magic bullshit on here. And she goes, yes, it would be so helpful if creatives were all social workers because we're trained on here's what's okay and what's not okay. You can come to my party, love to have you. You can't get shit-faced.
Yeah.
And that's a hard conversation. So I think one of the reasons why, or for creatives, the biggest thing I run into, and I work with creatives all the time and interviewed them just almost exclusively for Rising Strong, is people are afraid to put value on their work.
So true.
People are afraid to charge for it. People are afraid to, hey, look, I know you're a really good photographer. Can you come and shoot this wedding? Yeah, for nothing.
For $0.
Yeah, for just like a free quiche and, whatever. You're serving. No, because do you know how stressful it is when do you know what happens when you get to a wedding and things don't go well?
I've never shot a wedding in my life because the concept of the mother of the bride is way more frightening to me than Google head of advertising hanging with you. It's like for the people who do that's a stressful line of work for sure.
Right, and so the answer is I'd love to shoot the wedding. This is my fee for doing that.
Yeah.
Oh man, come on. I'd really love to, but because if you don't put value on your work, no one else will.
Rule number 7, get rid of negativity.
Negativity is toxic. We can debate ideas. We can talk about different strategies, but we will not trash talk people. We will not trash talk other programs, other business. No, let's keep it. And it's amazing how much forward progress and healthy conversations and true growth can happen when you take care of that safe space.
Yeah, it's Jill Bolte Taylor who said, take responsibility for the energy you bring into a room. And I feel like what people don't do online and social is they don't take responsibility for the energy they put out into the world. And in the worst case scenario, what they're putting out in the world is actually disembodied from their identity. It's anonymous.
Yeah.
So I respond to nothing that's anonymous. So if you've got some kind of flower icon and your name is like Lily from
Sassy Pants.
Yeah,
1, 2,
Sassy
3.
Pants 1, 2, 3. I'm not responding to you
Yeah.
because you're not in the arena. You're not showing up. You're not being brave. So I'm not going to have the conversation.
Rule number 8, don't armor up.
I want to start with 2 questions that I really want you to think about. And the 2 questions are, what should I be afraid of today? And who's to blame? What should scare me and whose fault is it? To me, these are the most profoundly dangerous questions that we center our lives around. And what they are indicators, to me, what they're indicators of is a culture of scarcity, a culture of not enough. And when you think about any milieu in your life, think about education. What are we supposed to be afraid of? And who's to blame? Politics, the economy, social issues. I guarantee you, if you turn on the news or opened a paper today, the focus would be, here's why you should be afraid and here's whose fault it is. And what's interesting to me about that is it's not just at a cultural level or a community level. That stuff happens in my house every week. Every week with my husband, I talk to him about what should be, why we should be fearful and whose fault it is. Mostly it's his. But if something doesn't go well at my daughter's school, then I'm like, oh my God, this is going to have huge implications for our university. And we should be terrified right now that she's not getting cursive. I know she's 4, but this is still relevant. It's indicative of scarcity. So let's talk about what scarcity culture is and what it looks like. Scarcity culture, I think, is best understood with a simple question of never enough. And you can fill in the blanks. Never good enough, safe enough, certain enough, perfect enough, relevant enough. And perhaps I think one of the most dangerous and insidious messages today is never extraordinary enough. Somehow, in the world we live in today, an ordinary life has become synonymous with a meaningless life. And it has huge, and I've watched it happen not only as a researcher, a qualitative researcher, so I sit across from people and look in their eyes and I have a good sense of what's going on in their lives. But as a university professor who's been teaching for the last 17 years, it's been very clear to me that extraordinary means relevant. And the top one is the big one for all of us personally, never good enough. Which is shame, which we all have on occasion, that sense that we're not smart enough, good enough, perfect enough, loved enough, promoted enough. We're not enough. So what we do in response to scarcity culture, I think all of us every day, is this. We wake up in the morning and we armor up. And we put it on and we say, I'm going to go out in the world. I'm basically just going to kick some ass. I'm not going to let anyone see who I am. And in doing so, I can protect myself against the things that hurt the most. Judgment, criticism, fear, blame, ridicule. I'm going to armor up and I'm going to be safe. And we rationalize and we convince ourselves that this armor is really smart. And we use a lot of different things to armor too. Perfectionism, intellectualizing. But if you get really, really clear about what we're doing every morning when we wake up and decide to armor, it's this simple. This is what we're protecting. We're protecting being hurt for a very simple reason that no one really wants to talk about, which is this: love, belonging, irreducible needs of men, women, and children. In the absence of love and belonging, there is always suffering. And so what we believe is that we can protect our sense of being lovable and being acceptable and being worth connection with armor. Here's the very worst news from my research. The news that above all other I did not want to hear is simply this. And I don't even want to say it to you because I think it's mean to say it. But it's so true. And it's simply our capacity for wholeheartedness can never be greater than our willingness to be brokenhearted, which is a terrible thing, but a truthful thing. That we can only love and be loved as much as we are willing to have our heart broken. And so when we move through the world like this, with our partners, with our children, with our friends, in classrooms, with the people who work for us, with the people we work for, there are tremendous casualties.
Rule number 9, believe in your self-worth.
Stop walking through the world looking for evidence that you're not enough, because you will always find it. Your self-worth and your belonging is not something that we negotiate externally. It's something we carry in our wild hearts. And if we spend our lives looking everywhere we go for evidence that I don't really belong in this meeting, I'm not really an artist, I just do this on the side and this is my side hustle, but it's not really my job, or we keep comparing ourselves, you will find exactly what you're looking for.
And rule number 10, the last one for a very special bonus clip, is show up.
What's the greatest truth that you practice regularly, that you embrace in your daily life?
I'm like a one-hit wonder over here, but I have to say that it goes back to be brave, show up.
That's all that matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really mean it.
Now, I've got a special bonus clip from Brenee on how to live wholeheartedly that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the 3-point landing questions. Let's go from just watching a video to taking action. Here we go. Question number 1. Where do you just need to show up more? Number 2, what negativity do you need to let go of? And number 3, where are you going to stop being a perfectionist?
If I roughly took the people I interviewed and divided them into people who really have a sense of worthiness, that's what this comes down to, a sense of worthiness. They have a strong sense of love and belonging. And folks who struggle for it, and folks who are always wondering if they're good enough. There was only one variable that separated the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging and really struggle for it, and that was the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging believe they're worthy of love and belonging. That's it. They believe they're worthy. And to me, the hard part of the one thing that keeps us out of connection is our fear that we're not worthy of connection, was something that personally and professionally I felt like I needed to understand better. So what I did is I took all of the interviews where I saw worthiness, where I saw people living that way, and just looked at those. What do these people have in common? And I have a slight office supply addiction, but it's another talk. So I had a manila notebook, a manila folder, and I had a Sharpie, and I was like, what am I going to call this research? And the first words that came to my mind were wholehearted. These are kind of wholehearted people living from this deep sense of worthiness. So I wrote at the top of the manila folder, and I started looking at the data. In fact, I did it first in this in a 4-day, very intensive data analysis where I went back, pulled these interviews, pulled the stories, pulled the incidents. What's the theme? What's the pattern? My husband left town with the kids because I always go into this kind of Jackson Pollock crazy thing where I'm just like writing and going and kind of just in my researcher mode. And so here's what I found. What they had in common was a sense of courage. And I want to separate courage and bravery for you for a minute. Courage, the original definition of courage, when it first came into the English language, it's from the Latin word cur, meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And so these folks had, very simply, the courage to be imperfect. They had the compassion to be kind to themselves first and then to others, because as it turns out, we can't practice compassion with other people if we can't treat ourselves kindly. And the last was they had connection
and this was the hard part, as a result of authenticity. They were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to be who they were, which is, you have to absolutely do that for connection. The other thing that they had in common was this. They fully embraced vulnerability. They believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. They didn't talk about vulnerability being comfortable, nor did they really talk about it being excruciating, as I had heard earlier in the shame interviewing. They just talked about it being necessary. They talked about the willingness to say I love you first. The willingness to do something where there are no guarantees. The willingness to breathe through waiting for the doctor to call after your mammogram. The willing to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. They thought this was fundamental.
If you want more Brenee, check out the first Top 10 Rules video I made on her. The link is right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
We think of it as the core of fear and shame and grief and disappointment, uncertainty, things that we do not want to. Core of fear and grief and disappointment, uncertainty, things that we.
Okay, wasn't that interesting? It was so rich with all kinds of learning information. I'm excited to see everybody's results of this and what they think. But I know Jane has a song for us, Jane.
Yes, and I just want to say I've got 2 songs today by Janice Stanfield, and this one is just, I just want it to be like a solo, just to kind of put an emphasis on the talk. And I'm going to say that Jana uses the word brave, but I think she uses it in the way that Brenee Brown speaks of courage. So I've got 2 songs by her today. This one we'll just have as a solo for people to just listen to, and the last one after our discussion when we close, we'll all sing together.
Thank you.
Here I am, a woman. I know it's hard for you to understand. My way of seeing, being so different from a man. My way looks softer, but let me offer the best explanation I can. If I'm afraid, doesn't mean that I'm not brave. And if I doubt, doesn't mean that I've lost faith. And if I fall, doesn't mean I can't go on. And if I cry, doesn't mean that I'm not strong. Peaceful warriors fight a different kind of fight. Is it really losing, choosing peace over being right? So don't compare me, judge me unfairly, and don't confuse power with might. 'Cause if I'm afraid, doesn't mean that I'm not brave. doesn't mean that I'm not strong. I can weep like there's no tomorrow, 'cause I know what tears are for. They wash away the sorrow to make room for joy and more. So if I'm afraid, doesn't mean that I'm not brave. And if I doubt, doesn't mean that I've lost faith. And if I fall, doesn't mean I can't go on. And if I cry, doesn't mean that I'm not strong. If I cry, doesn't mean that I'm not strong. Here I am, a woman.
Thank you, Jane. That was beautiful.
Everyone, you'll have to unmute yourself if you want to speak.
Okay. So, what does everybody think?
That's great. I've heard about her before. She's wonderful about vulnerability for sure. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Took a lot of notes.
Yeah, it's got 3 pages
Me too.
of notes on it.
Well, she's been around for a long time. I saw her on Oprah years ago.
Yeah. And she's on TED Talks. She's on a lot. She's very kind of tell it like it is, you know, and what she's saying is so true and so helpful. And it's looking at things another way, like your sense of worthiness. I mean, that's been a struggle for me all my life.
Mm-hmm.
So
I read the Talking to Strangers. I think the author is by Lieberman, but he said the cost of not being vulnerable is fear and paranoia.
yeah. And you miss out on half your life, you know, if you're afraid of being hurt. You miss out on so many things.
She talked about braving the wilderness.
I love that.
Which really resonated to me with what we call the terror barrier. And basically the terror barrier is anytime you entertain the idea of doing something that does not match what you have been doing or are used to doing.
Yeah.
And
what people expect you to do.
What people expect you to do and so forth. Now, as long as you're just entertaining the idea, nothing really happens. But when you really start moving towards that, that's when basically your you take on this new vibration and it has dissonance with the old vibration.
Oh.
And you experience that dissonance as fear and emotional discomfort. But in order for you to really make anything more than just very gradual evolutionary changes, if you're going to make a quantum jump in what you're able to do and so forth, that's what is required, is for you to face that terror barrier and push through it to the other side. Now, one of the other Proctor Gallagher consultants said, I've learned to look forward to the terror barrier because I know that my highest good is on the other side of that terror barrier.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And then you know you could do it again.
Well, yeah, then you go on to the next thing and you still feel that terror barrier, but you know that you don't get these quantum jumps without doing that. And after you push through it the first time, then I can push through this. Yes, I'm feeling discomfort. Yes, I'm feeling fear. But I know I can push through it, and things are going to be so much better afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. She talked about the shame thing. To me, shame is really a function of self-forgiveness. And
say some more, Paul.
I'm sorry?
Say some more about that.
Well, I mean, when you let's say I'm ashamed of the way I look, that essentially means that I have not forgiven myself for the way I look. And actually what I should be forgiving myself is my attitude about the way I look. Or if I've done something that I didn't like the results of it, then I may feel shame about what it is that I did. Well, there again, it's just really a question of self-forgiveness.
Thanks, that helps. That clarifies it.
That's actually the last unit in my Energy of Forgiveness workshop that I just completed a couple weeks ago. The self-forgiveness is, it's easy to forgive someone else. It's very difficult to forgive yourself for many of the reasons that this speaker talked about. But you have to be willing to forgive yourself.
And he said that shame breeds fear, blame, disconnection.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're afraid that if you, like she said, be vulnerable and reveal your faults, that you be excluded and pushed out because of this. And in some cases, like the other quote she's talking about, you may be, if you in the wilderness, when you're being true to yourself because you know that what's going on is wrong.
Did anyone see the article in the paper? It's either Richmond or Daily Progress. It was in today. This lady who had been shot in the face by her husband. Did anyone see that?
Yeah, and she just passed a day or so ago.
And the courage she had to go through all the surgeries she had and still go out in public with the disfigurement she had. It was a touching story to me.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't say what she passed from. She was fairly young, about 54, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. So she was fairly young to had certainly not lived as long of a life as she could have. But
the one who had a new face put on her, one of the people who had to have a face put on.
She had a face transplant.
Right, exactly. Yes.
And I think it was more than just the face. I think it was I think her upper jaw had to be replaced, and so they may have grafted the upper jaw in from this donor. So I'm not sure what exactly was going on there. And of course, anytime you do a transplant of someone else's body parts into your body part, your body says, "Oh, that's different," and attacks it. Yeah. And so, rejection is a big issue with any kind of transplant, be it face transplant or kidneys or heart or, brain or whatever. So
I wanted to ask what people thought about the Maya Angelou quote. I love Maya Angelou.
What was the quote?
something about you're free if you belong nowhere, belonging somewhere and standing alone.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're part of the group, then you feel, and there is if you're part of the group, then you have to sort of be somewhat subjective to the rules to fit in. There's a Russian word, which of course I can't remember, for a person who sort of stands apart. They're able to do, what they want without constrictions of this group. And they elaborated on this, which I really like, is that, if something's right, then you stand with it. But if you realize something's wrong, you don't give up who you are or who you believe you are just to fit in.
Yeah.
That resonates with me with the rioting and the demonstrations and all that. That just kind of put it in for me. It's like you can see everybody in the group, but you still have to have your own individuality where you stand up for who you are and don't go with the group,
Yeah. I've always identified with the term bohemian, not the culture, but it means indifferent or removed from culturally accepted standards.
Yeah.
You can look at the river and watch it flow by. You can get in the river. You can go down the river. You can get out of the river. You can get in the river and back in and out because you're indifferent or you're removed from it, but you're remaining true to yourself as to what your choice is, the degree of connection to.
This kind of aligns with something that I've always said, that the great irony in life is that you cannot have a healthy relationship until you don't need it.
Okay, talk about that some more, Paul. Say it again.
You
can have a relationship.
The great irony in life is that you cannot have a healthy relationship until you don't need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the idea
Self-confidence.
the idea there is that if you come into a relationship, and I mean, it could be an intimate relationship, it could be anything. If you come into a relationship from a point of neediness, which is kind of what Maya Angelou was talking about, you have to be able to stand alone and stand on yourself. Only when you can stand on your own and by yourself can you truly have a healthy relationship with the tribe, so to speak. Because, as I say, when if you come to it from a point of neediness, then the neediness is what makes it be unhealthy.
Yeah, I need you to
Neediness
help
has a lot of
fulfill me.
expectations.
Yeah.
Neediness and expectations go together.
Yeah.
And vulnerability comes into play there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, showing who you truly are instead of.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the whole idea of neediness is expecting someone else to make you whole. And the fact of the matter is that nobody can make you whole besides yourself. You are the only, I mean, I am the only one in this wide world, in this universe, that can make me whole. I'm the only one that can do that. Anne can't do that for me. I can only do it for myself.
By recognizing that you're already whole.
Yeah. Well, it's a choice, really. It's like being bored. Being bored is always a choice. Being happy is always a choice.
So I am choice.
I am choice. I am not only am I choice, but I am what I choose.
Right.
Well,
I like your difference between perfectionism and healthy striving.
Yeah. I have another Maya Angelou quote that's my very best favorite. is that when people show you who they are, believe them. That's like my very best favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to believe somebody's good, and they've just showed you that their intentions are not.
Over and over again, and I always say, "Oh, they can't really mean that," you know, and they do. So that has helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's abuse.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I think the woman that had a new face. I think that's why she didn't mind going out, because she was showing people what abuse can do to you.
Yeah.
But I think when you go through something that's that big a deal, you know, I'm not big on politicians, but John McCain, I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff that he said, but I was on a plane with him one time, and he flew coach, and people pretty much kind of didn't bug him too much, but people asked him stuff. But he was very engaging. He wasn't dismissive. He was just like anybody else in coach on the plane. And then when I saw him in his campaign, and somebody in the audience, an older lady, said something about Obama being a Muslim or something, and he went down and took the mic from her and said, no, ma'am. He's a good family man. I mean, this is totally against his campaign, you know, to speak well of his opponent.
The truth.
But he had such integrity, but I think a lot of it, he went through so much as a, you know, prisoner of war, that, you know, I don't think there was a lot that distracted him, you know.
What was that
Yeah.
story that?
Yeah, I have this story about this man. He ended up running a company, and people would come to him from the company and just you know, this guy's one of our, you know, this is a life and death situation. We got to take care of all this and get this taken care of. And he would, you know, kind of calmly say, I've been in life and death situations. This is not a life and death situation. You know, he'd been in the war and stuff.
Yeah. And it's kind of like
what a real life and death situation was.
Yeah.
And
All
anything
perspective.
less than that is not a life and death situation.
Yeah. It require the same mentality.
Yeah.
Paul, I want to come back to what you were talking about, the paradox of being in relationship and not being able to be in a really healthy relationship until you don't actually need the relationship. I'm going to offer a further paradox to that, and that is, though, that we need to realize that you don't get to that point without being vulnerable and imperfect in relationships, right?
Right.
To where you can stand on your own, you know, without being codependent or really needy in the relationship. We have to, in other words, we grow spiritually by engaging in our imperfection.
Yeah.
And even in our neediness, but, you know, so we mustn't be afraid to engage in relationships just because we haven't learned to belong everywhere but nowhere. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well,
lifelong process.
That kind of ties into my definition of love, which is the willingness to do that which serves the highest good for another. And Scott Peck's definition of love was the willingness to improve oneself for the benefit of another, which is kind of similar but not the same as my definition. But the point of that being that if I'm going to do that which serves the highest good for another, that kind of requires vulnerability. It also requires it requires vulnerability from the point of view of I'm going to put my own needs aside for a minute while I can think about what is the highest good for another. But then also recognizing that it's impossible to know what is for the best good of another. It's impossible to know that. So I'm willing to do that which serves the highest good, but I also know that I cannot know what that is.
Yeah, that's a paradox.
Yeah. So what that means is that I have to bring vulnerability to the table to recognize that, okay, I'm going to do this because I think it serves the highest good, but I'm also going to recognize that it may not be accurate. It may not be the highest good. And
Right.
so I need to be vulnerable and ready to accept that what I've done is maybe not the highest good, except that, I mean, in the long run, I think it is the highest good, whatever it is that you do. But from a short-sighted point of view, you may do something and the results don't turn out the way you expected or wanted. And you can be vulnerable in saying, well, I did the best I could and this didn't work out right. So let's, through the vulnerability, be willing to recognize that it may not have been the best thing.
Like that, another way to interpret the Maya Angelou quote of if somebody shows you who they are, believe them. A lot of things that people do in exchanges is a request for validation. I mean, when somebody will tell you what they need, and sometimes you're so busy or you're so much in your own head that you don't see that, and you do something you perceive as for their own good, but you might be distracted. I think a lot of it has to do with slowing down and being present in that regard, because somebody says, "Oh, there's a cool," I'm not in the car. Or somebody says, the husband says, "Oh, there's a cool car," and the wife dismisses it. Well, he's not just necessarily just talking about this stupid car. It's like, hey, can we connect with this about this? It's something I enjoy. Would you come over here and connect with me about this thing that I enjoy? And she might say the same thing about something that hers. And in choosing to not validate in that way is I can't remember. It's from a book I recently read, and it's all pretty much about validation.
Yeah.
And the research that was done, that you can tell with a great degree of accuracy if a couple isn't validating each other, they're probably not going to end up staying together because they're not paying attention to the connection that they're desiring with them.
Yeah. Well,
I see that a lot in grocery stores with parents and children. The child will pick something and say, "Oh, look at this," and mom will immediately say, "We're not getting that." It's like they're not asking you to get it; they're wanting you to look at it. See what it is, and
yeah. Oh yeah, that's really cool.
Say, "Oh, that's really cool." That'd be neat.
Yeah.
But
We had a
not on my
solution.
list.
We had a solution for that with Jesse, in that we gave him an allowance, and we expected him to use it. So when he would, this business of him picking stuff off the shelf in a store and
Wanting to get it.
and wanting it or whatever like that, it was, oh great, did you bring your wallet? And so we could be recognizing what it is that he was looking at and recognizing his interest in it and allowing him to decide if he wanted it badly enough to spend his money on it, because he knew the money that he had was a limited resource, so he had to choose what it was
Choose
that he
wisely.
wanted. But it also just it eliminated the issue of buy this for me, buy this for me, buy this for me. It's like, oh, this is cool, I want it. And oh great, did you bring your wallet?
Yeah.
That's neat.
I have that same problem with Pat when we go grocery shopping.
Do you tell her, did you bring your wallet?
No, I just turn around and all of a sudden there's all this stuff in the cart.
Yep.
Tom, why does she call you Wallet?
Well, you know, most people just want to be heard. They want
Yeah. And
Validate.
there's a saying that Paul says I like. That's the willingness to allow beingness.
That's my definition of the word grace, is the willingness to allow beingness.
Yeah. And to me, that speaks a lot of, you're allowing the other person to be who they are.
Yeah.
And they're going to allow you to be who you are. It's kind of a vulnerable thing there too.
That's really kind of validation at a deep
that's
level.
validation.
Yeah.
It's validation at a deep level. You're allowing them to be who they are, and you're valuing who they are. I mean, you're not just turning your head. You're valuing who they are. Willingness to allow beingness.
Brenee,
Somebody shows you who they are and they meet with criticism, they'll be less likely next time to want to show you who they are.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Hey, Paul?
Yeah?
The discussion share screen, if we didn't have that, would everybody be bigger? We could see them better?
Thank you. I will need to share again. We have more stuff on the slide, but I can.
I just drug that line over till it's as minimum as possible.
Is that better, Tom?
Yeah, if you put your
you can do it. Yeah, you can do it yourself.
Yeah. Whenever I'm talking like this, I make it everybody bigger.
Thanks,
Did
Ken.
the discussion screen disappear for you?
I've still got the discussion screen, but Kent said I just slid it over to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I paused the share. So did it go away, or?
It's
still there.
It's still there on mine.
Weird.
Oh, okay.
Now it's gone.
Okay.
Okay.
Now it's
I'll share again when we're ready to move on.
I don't know if everybody had a chance to read. When I sent the emails out, I also sent a lot of quotes from Brenee Brown. And one of them, I didn't send, but she talks about connection a lot. And her explanation of connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive substance and strength from the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool. Connection. And she had a couple of really good quotes. I sent some of them, and it was like, I want to be able to say that I contributed more than I criticized.
Like that.
Yeah. Integrity is choosing courage over comfort, choosing what is right over what is fun, fast, and easy, and choosing to practice our values rather than simply professing them.
Like that.
Who's the artist that she was talking about?
I thought it was funny about the
Carolyn's talking, but it's not.
I don't know if she said.
Carolyn,
I don't know if
you're
she
muted.
said.
You hear me?
Now we can, yeah.
Who was the artist that she was talking about?
I don't think she said. Did she?
Yeah, she did say.
Oh, she didn't.
She did say.
It told what people could do and what they couldn't do.
Yeah, right. I don't remember.
Boundaries.
I don't remember.
Carolyn, I think you're going to have to do more than hit the space bar to unmute.
Let me see. What else?
Now you're muted.
Let's see.
Now you're unmuted.
All right. I'm unmuted. Okay. Okay. I just wondered if anybody remembered the name. I couldn't get it, so.
I can look at it and listen to it and send it back to you.
The presentation will be linked to on the website a little later today, so you should be able to go back and listen to that again.
All right.
I have another quote that I liked. He said, leaders who live in their value are never silent about hard times.
Say that again.
Leaders who live into their values are never silent about hard things.
Right. They know their values and they aren't.
Right.
They know what they will do, what they won't do.
Yeah.
Integrity.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to share about it?
Who knows how they're going to vote?
Oh, I do. I know.
How are you going to vote? By mail, or are you going to go?
I'm personally going to go in person the first day of early voting. I want to be, I may be down there when they open the office on that morning. I want to be the first one in Orange County to vote.
Okay. All right, Nita, good. Yeah. I just wanted, because the mail is going to be slow. I don't know what's going to happen, but.
I heard something online about the post office making a statement that you want to try and have it in like in October, like by somewhere around in the middle of October to make sure.
Your mail-in ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I get it in the mail before everything opens up, I'll turn around and send it right that day. But if the polls open after we get before that, then I'll go to the polls.
I think they should have the polls out.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Oh, there's Tom.
That would make sense.
Early voting starts September 18th.
Oh.
Well, if the candidate dies before the election and you've already cast your vote.
Put your name in, Sylvia.
Okay, well, I have some news. On the 16th of this month, Reverend Robin is going to be our leader, and she's going to do the message. And on the 30th, Reverend Faith is going to talk to us.
Oh, great.
So
okay,
that's coming up too.
Okay, we have another piece of music to go.
Share screen on this one.
Let me share screen again.
Yeah, this is our closing song for everybody to sing.
And I will also have to, where is it? Share computer sound. That's still turned on. Okay, here we go.
Mute everybody.
What would I do if I knew that I could not fail? If I believed with the wind always fill up my sail, how far would I go? What could I achieve? Trusting the hero in me. If I were brave, I'd walk the razor's edge, where fools and dreamers dare to tread, and never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step would I take today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What if we're all meant to do what we secretly dream? What would you ask if you knew you could have anything? Like the mighty oak sleeps in the heart of a seed, are there miracles in you and me? If I were brave, I'd walk the razor's edge, where fools and dreamers dare to tread, and never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step would I take today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? If I refused to listen to the voice of fear, with the voice of courage whisper in my ear. If I were brave, I'd walk the razor's edge, where fools and dreamers dare to tread, and never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step would I take today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave?
Perfect songs, Jane. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
I love that. That's like, we should all listen to that song first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to thank everybody for their donations to PayPal and people sending me checks in the mail. That's wonderful to support our group, and we can have more speakers. And anything else? Have anybody else want to add? Okay. So as we go this week, we go in our courage and our strength. We speak our minds with our hearts, and we embrace compassion to listen to the stories of others without judgment. And we live in our vulnerability, being open to our lives and all our blessings. So knowing inner peace for everybody and health and wholeness, enjoy your week, and I will be sending you more information about next week. So thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Paul.
Thank you all.
Who is this?
Who's what?
That must have been Bob
Yeah.
Yes.
with his grandson.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to see everybody. I always enjoy and look forward to being with this group on Sundays.
Yeah,
we
me
do
too, for sure.
Challenging times.
Yes. Well, thank you for all your work too, Jane.
Yes.
Paul, thank you and Anne for always putting this together so great. We couldn't do it without you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you both.